You can't run, Grandma. Scream all you want. Nobody on this street is brave enough to save you.
Take your hands off me. I have survived worse men than you, and I am not afraid.
Keep talking, old woman. We'll drag you into that truck and leave everyone wondering where you disappeared.
Release her immediately, step away from the vehicle, and keep both hands where we can see them.
Come any closer, officers, and she hits the pavement before either of you reaches this sidewalk.
You have one chance to let her go peacefully before you destroy the rest of your lives.
The tattooed man blocked Evelyn's path while his partner laughed beside him. Neither of them knew the approaching officers were the homeless boys she had adopted 17 years earlier. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalk as Evelyn Carter turned the deadbolt on her community kitchen. The small storefront had fed 43 families today. She counted each meal served, each child who left with a full belly. Numbers mattered. Details saved lives. She tucked the kitchen keys into her worn canvas bag and started walking home. 3 blocks. The same route she'd taken for nearly 40 years. But today felt different. Heavy. Like the air before a storm. 2 men stepped out from behind a rusted city limit sign. Evelyn's steps never faltered. She'd noticed them 20 minutes ago through the kitchen window. Watching? Waiting. Their black sport utility vehicle idled at the corner with tinted windows and dealer plates that hadn't been registered yet. "Well, well," the taller man said. His voice carried the lazy confidence of someone used to being feared. "Look what we got here, Curtis." The shorter man grinned and spat onto the sidewalk. "Told you she'd come this way, Wade. Old habits die hard." Wade Mercer blocked her path. His arms were covered in crude prison tattoos. A wolf's head snarled from his neck. Steel-toed boots that could cave in ribs. Curtis Vale flanked her left side, cutting off the alley exit. His nervous energy made him more dangerous than his partner's cold cruelty. "You've been ignoring some important phone calls, grandmother," Wade said. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the cigarettes and cheap beer on his breath. Evelyn met his stare without flinching. "I don't talk to strangers on my block." Curtis laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Your block? Lady? You're living in a fantasy. This whole neighborhood's been sold already. You just ain't figured it out yet." "See, that's the problem with you people," Wade continued. His voice dropped to a mock whisper. "Always thinking you own something. Always thinking you got rights." Evelyn studied Wade's boots. Military surplus, size 12. The left sole had a distinctive chip near the heel. Curtis wore sneakers with red laces, fresh out of the box. Both men carried themselves like ex-convicts. Practiced violence hidden behind casual threats. "You people!" Evelyn kept her voice steady. "What people would that be?" Wade's grin widened. "Oh, you want to play games? Fine. I'm talking about ungrateful people. People who don't appreciate opportunity when it comes knocking. People who think they can tell their betters to go to hell." Curtis pulled a manila folder from his jacket. "Vane Urban Renewal made you a generous offer, grandmother. More money than this dump is worth. More money than someone like you deserves." "Someone like me?" Evelyn repeated. She pressed the small button on her wristwatch. The emergency recorder activated silently. "Don't act stupid," Wade snapped. "You know exactly what I mean. 40 years ago, you people couldn't even get a loan to buy a doghouse. Now you got the nerve to turn down legitimate business? Acting like you're too good for honest money?" "Here's what's gonna happen," Curtis said. He opened the folder and pulled out transfer papers. "You're gonna sign these documents, right here, right now. Then you're gonna pack whatever junk you can carry and disappear." Evelyn glanced at the papers, pre-signed by 3 witnesses she'd never met. A notary stamp already in place. "And if I refuse?" Wade grabbed her jaw with thick fingers. His grip was meant to hurt, to remind her how easily bones could break. "Then you're gonna learn why every other black family on this block decided to take the money and run." You think you're special, Curtis added. You think your little soup kitchen makes you untouchable? Lady, we've been watching you for weeks. We know when you leave. We know when you come home. We know you live alone. Evelyn forced herself to stay calm. Keep them talking. Let them reveal more than they intended. Watching me for weeks? Much longer than that, Wade said. His grip tightened. We know about those 2 boys you used to keep around. Couple of street rats you fed and housed. Wonder what happened to them. Probably in prison by now, Curtis laughed. Or dead. That's where boys like that end up. See, that's the thing about bleeding hearts like you, Wade continued. You think you're saving people, but you're just postponing the inevitable. Those boys? They were always going to be nothing. Just like this neighborhood. Just like you. Evelyn's anger burned cold and patient. She studied the vehicle's license plate. Maryland tags. The numbers and letters etched themselves into her memory. A small dent in the rear bumper shaped like a crescent moon. Every family on this block is getting the same deal, Curtis said. Rich white folks want to build something nice here. Clean up the trash. Make it safe for decent people. And you 2 work for these rich white folks? Evelyn asked. Wade's eyes glittered. We work for progress, grandmother. We work for people who understand that some neighborhoods need to be renovated. You got 5 seconds to sign those papers, Curtis said. He checked his watch. After that, things get complicated. Complicated how? House fires, Wade said simply. Car accidents. Disappearances. Old ladies fall downstairs all the time in Baltimore. Especially old ladies who don't listen to reason. Curtis opened the rear door of the sport utility vehicle. The interior was dark, soundproof, built for transportation that left no witnesses. Wade forced Evelyn toward the opening. Time's up, grandmother. You're coming with us. That's when 2 uniformed black officers turned the corner. They saw Evelyn. They saw the men restraining her. Recognition flashed across both faces like lightning. Then they started running. The 2 officers moved like predators closing on wounded prey, fast, controlled, deadly, serious. Baltimore police, release her now. The taller officer's voice carried the kind of authority that made smart criminals think twice. His partner flanked left, boxing the attackers between the vehicle and the brick wall. Wade's grip shifted to Evelyn's throat. His free hand disappeared into his jacket. Back off, Badges. This ain't police business. Everything involving an elderly woman being forced into a vehicle is police business, the shorter officer said. His voice was colder than winter steel. Step away from her. Hands visible. Now. Curtis swung the tire iron in a wide arc. You want her? Come take her. The fight erupted without warning. Wade's knife flashed silver as he yanked Evelyn against his chest. She became his shield, his protection. The blade pressed against her ribs while he backed toward the open vehicle door. One more step, and grandmother bleeds. Solomon Carter ducked Curtis's next swing and drove his shoulder into the man's midsection. They crashed into a parked sedan, metal dented, glass spider-webbed. Curtis brought the tire iron down hard across Solomon's back. Isaiah Carter absorbed Wade's wild punch to his ribs. Pain exploded through his chest, but he kept moving. Years of defensive training took over. He grabbed Wade's knife wrist with both hands and twisted hard. Bone ground against bone. Wade screamed and released Evelyn. The knife clattered onto asphalt. Wade swung desperately with his free hand. Isaiah ducked, maintained his grip, and drove Wade backward. They slammed into the brick wall. Isaiah used Wade's momentum against him, spinning and throwing the gang member face first onto the concrete. Wade's nose broke with a wet crunch. Blood pooled beneath his cheek. "Stay down," Isaiah commanded. He planted one knee between Wade's shoulder blades and reached for his handcuffs. 20 feet away, Solomon was losing his fight with Curtis. The tire iron connected with his shoulder, then his forearm. Curtis was bigger, stronger, and using the weapon like a club. Solomon took another blow to his ribs before he found his opening. Curtis raised the tire iron overhead for a killing strike. Solomon stepped inside the swing, grabbed Curtis by the belt and shirt collar, and used the man's own force to drive him sideways into a parked car. The vehicle's side mirror exploded. Curtis bounced off the metal and stumbled backward. Solomon followed him. 2 quick punches to the solar plexus. Curtis doubled over, gasping. Solomon grabbed his wrist, spun him around, and slammed him chest first against the car's hood. The handcuffs clicked into place. Curtis Vale, Solomon read from the man's wallet. Outstanding warrants for assault, extortion, and witness intimidation. You're under arrest. Evelyn stood frozen between the 2 scenes of violence. These officers moved like dancers, like they'd trained together for years, like they trusted each other completely. Then she saw their faces clearly for the first time. 17 years older, taller, broader, hardened by experience and discipline. But she knew those eyes. She knew the way the taller one protected people smaller than himself. She knew how the shorter one noticed details others missed. Isaiah? Her voice broke. Solomon? Isaiah Carter looked up from Wade's bleeding form. Recognition hit him like physical force. The woman he'd pulled from a burning building in his nightmares. The woman who'd fed them when they were hungry. The woman who'd given them a home when the world had thrown them away. "Mama Evelyn," he whispered. Solomon's hands shook as he secured Curtis's restraints. "We came home," he said. "We finally came home." Their reunion lasted exactly 4 seconds. That's when Solomon found the photographs in Wade's jacket. The first picture was recent. Evelyn standing between 2 uniformed police officers outside Baltimore City Hall. The officers were Isaiah and Solomon. Someone had drawn red circles around all 3 faces. The second photograph was 17 years old. 2 homeless boys sleeping behind a trash bin outside Evelyn's row house. Someone had written, "Targets acquired," across the bottom in black marker. Wade spat blood onto the sidewalk and grinned. "She should have left you where she found you 17 years ago." Isaiah grabbed Wade by the shirt collar. "What did you say? You think this was random?" Wade's broken nose made his voice thick and nasal. "You think we just happened to grab her today? Boy, we've been watching all 3 of you since you were nothing but street rats begging for scraps." A black sport utility vehicle roared around the corner at 50 miles per hour. Its engine screamed like an angry beast. The driver aimed directly at the parked patrol car. "Move!" Solomon shouted. The SUV struck the police cruiser with tremendous force. Metal shrieked against metal. The patrol car spun sideways and slammed into a fire hydrant. Water erupted like a geyser, flooding the street. Curtis broke free during the chaos. He sprinted toward the damaged SUV, dragging his handcuffs behind him. Wade struggled to his feet, blood streaming down his face. Isaiah and Solomon threw themselves over Evelyn as debris rained down around them. The SUV's passenger door flew open. Curtis dove inside. The vehicle reversed, tires smoking, and disappeared into Baltimore traffic. Wade looked directly at Isaiah and Solomon through the settling dust and spray. "Someone's been watching you boys since childhood," he said. "Someone important. Someone who's been waiting 17 long years for you to come home." The sport utility vehicle's engine roared as it reversed away from the wreckage. Curtis Vale threw himself through the open rear door, his handcuffs scraping against the metal frame. The driver gunned the accelerator before Curtis could even close the door properly. Isaiah hauled Evelyn to her feet and pushed her toward their damaged patrol car. Water from the broken hydrant soaked through their clothes. Glass crunched beneath their boots. "Can you drive it?" Solomon shouted over the noise. Isaiah yanked open the driver's door. The front bumper was crumpled, but the engine still ran. "We'll find out." Solomon slid into the passenger seat and grabbed the radio. This is Unit 12 requesting immediate backup. Black SUV heading east on Monument Street. 2 suspects fleeing a felony assault on a civilian. The dispatcher's voice crackled through static. Unit 12, backup is 15 minutes out. Maintain safe distance. 15 minutes? Solomon slammed the radio down. They'll be in 3 different states by then. Isaiah threw the patrol car into drive. The damaged vehicle lurched forward, metal grinding against the front tires. Get in back with Mama Evelyn. Make sure she's secure. Solomon vaulted over the seat and helped Evelyn with her seatbelt. Her hands were still shaking from the attack, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "Which way did they go?" she asked. "East toward the industrial district," Isaiah said, fighting to keep the steering wheel straight. The alignment was completely shot. Evelyn leaned forward between the front seats. "They're not heading for the highway. Too much traffic this time of day. They'll cut through the old warehouse district where the patrol units can't follow easily." She pointed left at the next intersection. "Turn here. Take Franklin to the rail yards." Isaiah hesitated. "That's the wrong direction, Mama Evelyn." "Trust me, baby. I worked transit maintenance for 32 years. I know every shortcut, every service road, every abandoned lane in this city." Her voice carried absolute certainty. "They're heading for the old Baltimore and Ohio rail line. It runs beneath that overpass up ahead. Cars can drive on the maintenance road, but most people don't know it exists." Solomon spotted the black SUV 3 blocks away, weaving between slower vehicles. "There! They're moving fast toward the railroad district." "Take the next right," Evelyn instructed. "Then straight through that service gate beside the chain-link fence." Isaiah followed her directions without question. They drove beneath a concrete overpass that most people used only as shelter from rain. The road continued on the other side, running parallel to abandoned railway tracks. "This connects to the main line?" Isaiah asked. "It connects to everything," Evelyn said. "Drainage tunnels, freight corridors, maintenance yards. But there's only one way out if you don't know the system." She pointed ahead to where the service road narrowed between 2 concrete barriers. "They'll have to come through there, park sideways, and block their exit." Isaiah positioned the patrol car across the narrow passage just as the black SUV appeared around a distant curve. The driver realized the trap too late. He slammed the brakes, but the vehicle skidded on loose gravel and struck a concrete post. Steam hissed from the SUV's damaged radiator. Curtis and the driver scrambled out through opposite doors and ran in different directions. The driver disappeared into a maze of abandoned buildings. Curtis limped toward the railway tracks, his handcuffs still attached to one wrist. "Should we pursue on foot?" Solomon asked. "Let them run," Isaiah said. "We got what we really needed." Solomon approached the abandoned SUV carefully, his weapon drawn. The passenger door hung open. Maps and documents were scattered across the floor and seats. He gathered the papers methodically. Street maps of West Baltimore with red circles around specific addresses. Photographs of elderly black residents walking to church, shopping for groceries, tending their gardens. A typed schedule showing police patrol times and response delays for different neighborhoods. The most disturbing document was a property list. 47 homes marked for acquisition. Some were labeled intimidation, others said fire hazard. 3 were marked forced sale. At the bottom of the list was a hand-drawn map of their current block. Evelyn's house was circled in thick black ink with the words "Final Obstacle" written underneath. "What is it?" Isaiah asked, seeing Solomon's expression. Solomon held up the property list. "This wasn't random, brother. They've been planning something big. Something that requires removing every black homeowner from a specific area." Evelyn studied the map over his shoulder. Her community kitchen was marked with an X. Her neighbors' houses were numbered like items on a shopping list. "This is about the whole neighborhood," she said quietly. "They're not just trying to scare me. They're trying to empty the entire block." Isaiah's jaw tightened. "Who's behind this?" Solomon found a business card tucked beneath the driver's seat. Vane Urban Renewal, premium property development for Baltimore's future. He flipped it over. There was a handwritten note. Phase 2 begins Monday. Clear remaining obstacles by Sunday night. Today was Saturday. We need to get back, Evelyn said. If they're moving this fast, other families are in immediate danger. By the time they returned to Evelyn's block, the sun was setting behind the row houses. Neighbors had gathered on their front steps, drawn by the sound of sirens and the sight of the damaged patrol car. Mrs. Washington from next door hurried over as they parked. "Evelyn, are you hurt? We saw those men grab you." "I'm fine, Dorothy. These officers helped me." Isaiah and Solomon stood on either side of Evelyn, still in their torn and dirty uniforms. They looked like soldiers who'd returned from battle. "Mama Evelyn," Isaiah said formally, "we want you to know that we're here to protect you. Whatever's happening in this neighborhood, we won't let anyone hurt you." Solomon nodded. "We owe you everything. Our lives, our careers, our futures. We're going to make sure you're safe." Evelyn looked at the two men who'd once been frightened boys sleeping behind her trash cans. They were strong now, trained, capable of fighting back against the people who preyed on others. But that wasn't enough. "I appreciate that, sons. I truly do." She gestured toward the row houses where lights were beginning to appear in windows. "But saving me isn't the point. Look around. Mrs. Washington has lived here 43 years. The Rodriguez family just bought their first house last spring. Those teenagers on the corner? They don't have anywhere else to go if this neighborhood disappears." She took the property list from Solomon's hands and studied the circled addresses. "You want to protect me? Then we protect all of us. We save the entire neighborhood." The community kitchen felt smaller with 15 people crowded inside. Neighbors sat on folding chairs, leaned against the serving counter, and stood near the windows despite the darkness outside. Word had spread quickly through the block. Everyone wanted to know what had happened to Evelyn Carter. "They grabbed her right in broad daylight," Mrs. Washington was saying. "Two big men with tattoos all over their arms." "Same one's been driving around here all week," added Carlos Rodriguez. "My wife saw them taking pictures of our house yesterday." Evelyn moved between her neighbors, pouring coffee and checking on the older residents. Isaiah and Solomon stood near the kitchen entrance, still wearing their damaged uniforms. Both men kept glancing toward the windows. "Everyone needs to calm down," Evelyn said. "We're safe right now." The television in the corner was tuned to the evening news. A reporter stood outside City Hall interviewing a well-dressed white man in his 50s. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his suit probably cost more than most people in the room made in a month. "That's Everett Vane," whispered Clara Bell, pointing at the screen. "The man who owns that development company." On television, Vane's voice was smooth and concerned. "Gang violence against elderly residents is absolutely unacceptable. Mrs. Carter is exactly the kind of community leader Baltimore needs to protect. Vane Urban Renewal is prepared to provide private security for any resident who feels unsafe during this difficult transition." He looked directly into the camera. "We believe every family deserves a safe, affordable home. That's why we're committed to renewing this neighborhood while preserving its character and helping longtime residents benefit from increased property values." "Lying snake," Clara muttered. The reporter pressed him about the development timeline. "When do you expect construction to begin on the new housing complex?" "We're moving as quickly as possible," Vane replied. "Every day we delay means another day families have to live in fear. We want to break ground within weeks, not months." The interview ended and the newscast moved to sports. Isaiah reached for the remote to turn down the volume, but before he could touch it, 3 bricks crashed through the kitchen windows. Glass exploded across the linoleum floor. Women screamed. Children started crying. The bricks rolled to a stop near the serving counter, each one wrapped with white paper and secured with rubber bands. Solomon drew his weapon and moved to the broken windows while Isaiah positioned himself between the residents and the door. "Everyone stay down." Evelyn knelt beside Clara Bell, who had fallen from her chair. "Are you hurt, honey?" "Just scared to death," Clara said, breathing hard. Solomon carefully unwrapped one of the papers. His face darkened as he read, "Get out while you can, old woman. Black families don't belong here anymore. Next time, we won't use bricks." The second message was worse. "We know where your grandchildren go to school." The third was addressed to specific residents by name. Mrs. Washington, Rodriguez family, Turner boys, sell now, or we'll make you disappear. "That's it," Isaiah said firmly. "Everyone needs to evacuate immediately. We'll arrange temporary housing until this threat is neutralized." But Evelyn was already moving, collecting the glass carefully and examining the window frames. "Nobody's leaving their homes." "Mama, this isn't safe." "Safe rooms," she interrupted, looking around the kitchen. "We set up safe rooms in the strongest houses on the block. Mrs. Washington, your basement has those thick stone walls from when this was all one building, right? And Carlos, your house has those steel security doors?" Carlos nodded. "Installed them myself last year. We create a witness list. Everyone writes down what they've seen, when they've seen it, who was involved. We organize rotating watches so people aren't alone." She picked up her phone. "And we document every single threat." Clara Bell struggled to her feet. "Evelyn's right. Running away just gives them what they want." "Tell them about the offer, Clara," Mrs. Washington said. Clara's hands shook as she smoothed her dress. "Man from Vane's company came to my door 3 weeks ago, offered me $28,000 for a house worth at least $60. When I said no, he got real ugly real fast. Said I was too old to understand business, and maybe I needed help making smart decisions." She paused, wiping her eyes. "Next day, my grandson Marcus got jumped walking home from school. 3 boys told him his grandmother better learn to count money before she forgot how to breathe." Isaiah's fists clenched. "Did you report it?" "Course I did. Officer came by, took a statement, said kids fight all the time. Nothing ever happened." Solomon was studying the documents they'd recovered from the SUV. "What time did the attack on Marcus happen?" "About 3:30 in the afternoon, right when school lets out." Solomon compared the police schedules with his notes. According to this, Unit 47 should have been patrolling that area at 3:30, but dispatch records show they were redirected to handle a vandalism call across town. Same pattern for every attack this month. He spread the papers across the serving counter. "Look at this. Every time the Foundry Wolves strike, the nearest patrol units get pulled away for minor calls. Traffic stops, noise complaints, false alarms. Someone's been clearing the path for these attacks." A knock at the front door made everyone freeze. Isaiah moved to answer it while Solomon kept his hand near his weapon. "Evening, officers." A uniformed Baltimore police sergeant stood on the front step. He was white, middle-aged, with tired eyes and a slight gut. "Sergeant Phillips. Got a call about some vandalism." He looked past Isaiah at the broken windows. "Looks like kids throwing rocks. Happens all the time in neighborhoods like this." "This wasn't vandalism," Isaiah said coldly. "This was targeted harassment with racial threats." Phillips shrugged. "I'll need to take any physical evidence for the report." He spotted Evelyn's recorder on the kitchen counter, including any recordings made during the incident. He reached for it without waiting for permission. Isaiah's hand closed around Phillips's wrist. "You're not taking anything without proper evidence paperwork and chain of custody procedures." Phillips tried to pull free, but Isaiah's grip was iron. "Son, I've been doing this job since before you were born. Don't tell me how to handle evidence." "Then handle it properly," Solomon said, stepping beside his brother. Evidence log, witness statements, photographs of the scene, basic procedure. Phillips glared at both men. You boys got badges? We have badge numbers, names, and recording devices, Isaiah said evenly. Would you like to see them? The sergeant released the recorder and stepped back. This is being handled by local patrol. Federal officers don't have jurisdiction over neighborhood disputes. He headed for the door, then turned back. Word of advice? These people need to accept reality. Change is coming whether they like it or not. Fighting it just makes things harder for everyone. After Phillips left, the kitchen fell silent except for the sound of glass crunching under people's feet. Solomon was studying the dispatch records again. His face had gone pale. What is it? Evelyn asked. Solomon pointed to the authorization codes at the bottom of each suspicious dispatch change. The same signature appeared on every redirected patrol unit, every delayed response, every cleared path for the Foundry Wolves. Commander Gideon Rourke, he said quietly. Our commanding officer signed off on every single one. The house settled into an uneasy quiet near midnight. Mrs. Washington dozed in Evelyn's armchair while Clara stretched out on the living room couch. 2 other neighbors had accepted Evelyn's offer to stay the night rather than risk walking home alone. Isaiah positioned himself by the front windows where he could watch the street. Solomon took the back door. Evelyn moved through the kitchen, checking locks and drawing curtains. The broken glass had been swept up, but jagged holes still gaped where the bricks had punched through. Cold air whistled through the gaps. I need to fix the wiring in the basement, she told her sons quietly. Those bricks knocked something loose. Half my outlets aren't working. Isaiah looked up from his position. Can it wait until morning? Electrical fires don't wait. Evelyn picked up a flashlight and toolbox. Won't take long if you 2 help me. The basement stairs creaked as they descended into the darkness below. Evelyn's flashlight beam swept across concrete walls lined with old transit maps, maintenance schedules, and repair manuals from her decades working for the city. Metal shelving held coffee cans filled with screws, wire nuts, and electrical supplies. Power's off to this section, Evelyn said, testing a wall switch. Good thing I learned basic wiring from the transit crews. She directed the flashlight toward an electrical panel mounted near the furnace. Loose wires dangled from a damaged junction box, where vibrations from the brick impacts had shaken connections free. Solomon held the light steady, while Isaiah handed Evelyn tools from the box. When did you learn to do electrical work? 40 years. Maintaining bus depots teaches you everything, Evelyn said, stripping wire with practiced movements. Couldn't wait for contractors every time something sparked. She worked methodically, reconnecting grounds and testing circuits. Isaiah watched her hands move with the same confident precision she'd shown cooking dinner for a houseful of scared neighbors. Almost done, Evelyn said, reaching behind the panel to secure the main feed wire. Her fingers brushed against something unexpected. That's strange. She leaned closer, running her hand along the back edge of the electrical panel. There's something back here. Feels like a metal box. Solomon angled the flashlight as Evelyn worked her fingers around the hidden compartment. With a soft click, a narrow metal box slid free from a concealed bracket mounted to the wall studs. The box was about the size of a phone book, sealed with electrical tape that had yellowed with age. Evelyn set it carefully on her workbench and peeled away the tape with her fingernails. Inside, wrapped in plastic, were 3 items that made all of them freeze. A small cassette recorder, a handwritten ledger bound with a rubber band, and a Baltimore police badge with the name A. Carter engraved on the shield. Isaiah's voice came out as a whisper. That's our mother's badge. Evelyn's hands trembled as she lifted the items from the box. The plastic crinkled as she unwrapped the cassette player, its black metal surface worn smooth from handling. Solomon took the ledger with careful reverence. The cover was filled with their mother's precise handwriting. Names, dates, badge numbers, financial transactions, page after page of meticulous documentation. She hid this here, Evelyn said softly, before the fire. Isaiah couldn't speak. He reached for the badge and traced his mother's name with his thumb. The metal was cold, but it felt like touching a piece of his childhood that had been lost forever. "We need to hear what's on that tape," Solomon said. Evelyn found batteries in her supply shelf and loaded them into the recorder. The cassette clicked into place with a sound that seemed too loud in the basement silence. She pressed play. The voice that emerged from the tiny speaker made both brothers sink onto metal stools. It was their mother, alive again in the darkness. "My name is Alana Carter, badge number 42478. If someone finds this recording, it means something happened to me." Her voice was calm but edged with fear. "I've been investigating police protection of the Foundry Wolves for 8 months. What I found goes deeper than gang violence. It's systematic corruption that reaches into city contracts, redevelopment projects, and environmental crimes." She paused, and they could hear pages rustling. "The wolves aren't just terrorizing black homeowners. They're clearing neighborhoods for illegal industrial dumping, toxic waste from chemical plants, construction debris, contaminated soil. Everything gets buried beneath properties scheduled for redevelopment." Solomon grabbed the ledger and followed along as Alana read names and badge numbers. Officers who redirected patrol units, inspectors who ignored environmental violations, city officials who approved construction permits for contaminated sites. "The money comes through a company called Vane Urban Development," Alana's voice continued. "President is Everett Vane, 26 years old, family money, smart enough to use shell companies and legitimate business fronts. He pays the wolves to terrorize residents, then swoops in with lowball offers for abandoned properties." Isaiah's fists clenched as his mother described the same tactics they'd seen used on Clara and the other neighbors. "But there's one officer I'm most afraid of," Alana said, her voice dropping. "Commander Gideon Rourke. He coordinates everything. Patrol schedules, evidence disposal, witness intimidation. The other corrupt officers report to him. If something happens to me, Rourke will be the one who ordered it." The recording continued for another 20 minutes. Alana documented specific dates, financial transfers, and locations where toxic materials had been illegally buried. She described surveillance on her family and threats against her children. "I'm transferring all physical evidence tomorrow night," she said near the end. "If this works, we can expose everyone involved. If it doesn't," her voice caught. "Isaiah and Solomon, if you ever hear this, know that I loved you more than life itself, and know that the people who killed me are still out there, still hurting families like ours." The tape ended with a soft click. For long moments, nobody moved. The basement felt like a tomb where the past had suddenly awakened. Solomon was flipping through the ledger with shaking hands. "Look at the dates. She made the final entry on March 15th, 17 years ago. The day before the warehouse fire," Isaiah said. "The fire that killed her." Solomon's voice was flat. "The fire that made us homeless. The fire that brought us to Evelyn's door." He looked up from the ledger. "It wasn't an accident." Isaiah stood abruptly, pacing to the far wall. "Rourke saved us from that fire. He carried us out himself." "Did he?" Solomon asked quietly. "Or did he just make sure we survived as witnesses to his rescue? He's been our mentor for 15 years. He guided our careers, supported our educations, treated us like sons." Solomon was reading more entries. "He also personally approved our transfers back to Baltimore 3 weeks ago, right before the redevelopment campaign turned violent." The implications hit Isaiah like physical blows. Their childhood trauma, their placement with Evelyn, their police careers, their recent homecoming. Every major event in their adult lives had been shaped by the man who may have murdered their mother. Evelyn's phone buzzed with a text message. She read it, and her face went pale. "What is it?" Solomon asked. "Commander Rourke. He wants both of you to report to his office immediately. He says to bring every item recovered from my house for evidence processing." Dawn light was starting to filter through the basement window. The night had ended, but something much darker was beginning. The morning sun cast long shadows across the downtown precinct as Isaiah and Solomon climbed the concrete steps to Commander Rourke's office. Each brother carried a manila folder containing carefully selected copies of documents from Evelyn's basement. The real ledger, tape recording, and police badge remained hidden beneath Clarabelle's floorboards. Isaiah's stomach churned as they approached the familiar oak door. How many times had he walked this same hallway, proud to serve under the man who'd saved his life? How many conversations had they shared about justice, duty, and protecting the innocent? "Carter brothers!" Rourke's voice boomed as they entered. He rose from behind his desk, arms spread wide in greeting. "Glad you're both safe after yesterday's excitement." The commander looked exactly as he always had, graying hair perfectly trimmed, uniform pressed and spotless, the same warm smile that had encouraged them through police academy, celebrated their graduations, and welcomed them home to Baltimore 3 weeks ago. "Sir," Isaiah said, placing his folder on the desk. Rourke embraced him like a father greeting his son. "I heard about the attack on Mrs. Carter. Terrible thing. Gang violence is getting completely out of hand in that neighborhood." Solomon set down his folder and studied the commander's face. "We recovered some items from her basement during our search for additional threats." "Good thinking." Rourke opened Isaiah's folder first, scanning the pages with practiced efficiency. Old police reports, property records, financial documents, standard stuff for elderly residents who've lived in one place for decades. He picked up a faded incident report. "Wait a minute. This is about your biological mother, isn't it? Alana Carter. I remember that case." Isaiah's breath caught. "You remember it?" "Of course. Tragic warehouse fire. Poor woman got trapped trying to salvage business records from her employer's office." Rourke shook his head sadly. "The investigation showed she was involved in some questionable financial activities, possible embezzlement. The fire may have been intentionally set to cover up evidence." "That's not what we found," Solomon said carefully. Rourke's expression hardened slightly. "Son, your mother made some serious accusations against several good officers, claims about corruption, conspiracy theories, paranoid ramblings. The department investigated every allegation thoroughly. Nothing was substantiated. But the ledger entries were the desperate fabrications of a woman facing criminal charges." Rourke closed the folder with finality. "I know this is painful. You want to remember your mother as a hero instead of a criminal, but sometimes the truth hurts." Isaiah felt the room spinning around him. 15 years of trust warred against one night of evidence. The man who'd attended his graduation, who'd recommended him for specialized training, who'd personally approved his transfer back to Baltimore. "I'm reassigning both of you effective immediately," Rourke continued. "The gang investigation requires experienced detectives with community connections. You're too close to this case, and your judgment may be compromised." Solomon's jaw tightened. "Sir, with respect, we know that neighborhood better than anyone, which is exactly why you're off the case." Rourke's voice carried unmistakable authority. "Isaiah, you're moving to traffic enforcement downtown. Solomon, you'll handle property crimes in the Northern District. Desk duty for both of you until further notice." "Commander," Isaiah started. "That's final." Rourke stood, signaling the meeting's end. "Take some time to process what you've learned about your mother. Grief can make us see conspiracies where none exist." Outside the precinct, Solomon grabbed his brother's arm. "We're going to records." "What's the point?" "He explained everything." "Did he? Or did he just discredit everything before we could ask the right questions? They spent 2 hours in the basement archives, reviewing dispatch logs from the past month. The pattern emerged slowly but unmistakably. Every time the Foundry Wolves attacked a homeowner, patrol units in that sector had been redirected to handle priority calls elsewhere. Emergency responses were delayed. Backup requests went unanswered. And every redirection order came from the same source, Commander Gideon Rourke. Meanwhile, across town, Evelyn and Clara Bell sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs inside the city records office. The clerk behind bulletproof glass looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "I need property records for the 2400 block of Edmondson Avenue," Evelyn said clearly. "Public records, going back 20 years. The clerk barely looked up. "System's down. Try again next week." Clara leaned forward. "The computer screen behind you is clearly working, young man." "Ma'am, I said the system's down." Evelyn pulled out her phone and began recording. According to Maryland public information law, citizens have the right to inspect government records during normal business hours. Your refusal to provide access violates state statute 4103. The clerk's face reddened. "You can't record in here." "I can record my interactions with public employees while requesting public information." Evelyn kept the phone steady. "Your name tag says Marcus. What's your last name?" "Marcus." 20 minutes later, they sat in Clara's car reviewing photocopied property deeds, tax liens, and sale contracts. The pattern was obvious once they saw it whole. Vane Urban Renewal had been quietly purchasing tax liens on properties surrounding an abandoned industrial site. Not random acquisitions, but a deliberate circle of ownership designed to control access to a specific location. "Look at this," Clara said, pointing to an environmental assessment report. "Soil contamination, groundwater pollution, chemical residue. That site is poisoned, and somebody buried the cleanup costs by scaring away all the neighbors." That afternoon, Isaiah and Solomon sat around Evelyn's kitchen table as she heated leftover stew. The small room felt heavy with accumulated secrets. Solomon opened his laptop and showed them what he'd discovered in the archives. Rourke didn't just redirect patrols, he coordinated them. Every attack, every threat, every intimidation campaign happened exactly when and where he made sure officers wouldn't interfere. Isaiah stared at the screen, watching his worldview crumble one dispatch log at a time. "There's more," Solomon continued. "I traced our police academy scholarships. Both came from the Rourke Foundation for Community Safety. The foundation's primary donor?" He looked up. "Everett Vane." The silence stretched until Clara Bell's voice cut through it like a blade. "They've been watching you boys your whole lives." Late that afternoon, the three compared records at Evelyn's kitchen table. The documents spread across the worn wood told a story that made Solomon's stomach turn. "Look at this," he said, tracing a financial trail with his finger. "Foster care stipends, educational grants, police academy scholarships. Every dollar came from shell companies owned by Vane Urban Renewal." Isaiah picked up a scholarship letter bearing his name. The official letterhead read, "Rourke Foundation for Community Safety," but the bank routing number matched Everett Vane's corporate accounts. "They bought our educations," Isaiah said quietly. "Our careers, our lives." Evelyn studied a medical record from Solomon's childhood appendectomy. Even hospital bills. "When you were 13 and needed surgery, I couldn't afford it. A charitable foundation stepped in." She looked up. Guess who funded that foundation? Solomon's hands clenched into fists. 17 years of watching us, making sure we stayed grateful, making sure we never asked questions. "They needed you close," Clara Bell said from the doorway. She'd arrived with a box of her own records, but not too close. 2 smart boys who might remember their mama's voice on that tape. Isaiah stood and walked to the window. Outside, children played in the narrow street while elderly residents sat on their front steps. Normal life continuing while his own past revealed itself as an elaborate lie. "So what now?" he asked. "Everything I thought I knew about my life was manufactured by the people who killed my mother." Before anyone could answer, a smoke alarm shrieked from 2 doors down, Clara's house. Evelyn was already moving toward the door when Solomon grabbed her arm. "Stay inside. Call 911. "That's my best friend's house," Evelyn snapped, pulling free. "And those records we need are in her dining room." They rushed outside as thick black smoke poured from Clara's rear porch. The front gate had been chained shut with heavy links, trapping anyone inside. Orange flames crawled up the back wall toward the second floor. "Water!" Evelyn shouted to neighbors gathering on the sidewalk. "There's a hydrant in the alley behind Monroe Street." Isaiah examined the chain securing the front gate. New steel, professionally installed. This wasn't random. Solomon was already sprinting toward the side of the house. A basement window stood slightly open, their only way in. The smoke was thicker inside. Solomon dropped through the window into Clara's basement and immediately heard voices upstairs. Not Clara's voice, male voices, angry and confident. He climbed the basement stairs slowly, each step revealing more of the scene above. Through the kitchen doorway, he could see 2 men in dark clothing. One held a baseball bat. The other was pouring gasoline from a red container across Clara's dining room floor, right where she kept her property records. Solomon keyed his radio. "Isaiah, there are people inside, armed. They're not here for Clara." "Copy. I'm coming through the front." The crash of breaking chain links echoed through the house. The men with the bats spun toward the sound, giving Solomon his opening. He launched himself up the final steps and tackled the gasoline-pouring man through the back doorway. They rolled across Clara's small porch, flames licking at their clothes. The man was stronger than expected, twisting free and swinging a heavy wrench at Solomon's head. Solomon ducked and drove his shoulder into the attacker's ribs, slamming him against the porch railing. The man grunted and brought the wrench down toward Solomon's spine. Inside the house, Isaiah kicked through the front door just as the second attacker charged down the narrow hallway with the baseball bat raised high. The cramped space worked against both men, limiting their movements. The bat whistled past Isaiah's ear and splintered the doorframe. Isaiah grabbed the man's wrist and spun him around, using his momentum to drive him face first into the wall. The attacker bounced back and swung again, this time connecting with Isaiah's shoulder. Pain shot down Isaiah's arm, but he kept moving. He caught the bat on the backswing and twisted hard, hearing something pop in the man's wrist. The attacker screamed and released the weapon. Isaiah pinned him beneath the stair rail, using his full weight to keep him down. "Where's Clara Bell?" The man glared at him. "You'll get nothing from me." Solomon's fight spilled back into the kitchen. His opponent had dropped the wrench, but produced a knife from his boot. The blade caught the light from the spreading fire as he slashed at Solomon's chest. Solomon stepped back, bumped into Clara's kitchen table, and grabbed a cast-iron skillet from the stove. He blocked the next knife thrust with the pan, the blade sparking off the metal, then swung it hard into the man's temple. The attacker dropped like a stone. "Clara!" Isaiah called out. "Where are you?" A muffled voice came from upstairs. "Here! I'm tied up in the bathroom." Solomon bounded up the steps, 3 at a time. Clara sat on the bathroom floor, her wrists bound with zip ties and a dish towel stuffed in her mouth. Alive, but shaken. "Are you hurt?" Solomon asked, cutting her free. Clara spat out the towel. "They said they wanted the papers from my dining room. Then they were gonna burn the whole place down with me in it." Isaiah appeared in the doorway, supporting his injured shoulder. "House is clear. Both attackers are unconscious." They helped Clara downstairs and outside, where Evelyn was directing neighbors with garden hoses toward the flames. The fire department's sirens wailed in the distance, but the residence had already contained most of the blaze. Solomon searched the unconscious attackers and found something interesting in the first man's jacket pocket. A burner phone, still warm from recent use. The message history was brief but telling. Burn the records, all of them. Make it look like an accident. If the old woman talks, shut her up permanently. All messages came from a contact labeled simply MS. As the fire trucks arrived and paramedics examined Clara, the burner phone buzzed with a new message. Finish Evelyn before the commander loses control. The church basement smelled of old coffee and mildewed hymnals. Reverend Thomas Hale unlocked the storage room where they spread Alana's evidence across folding tables. The harsh fluorescent light made everything look stark and cold. Solomon connected the burner phone to his laptop. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he traced the payment history. The numbers registered to a shell company, but look at these transactions. Columns of data filled the screen. Dates, amounts, account numbers. This phone paid for foster care services 17 years ago, Solomon said. His voice got quieter. It paid for our school supplies, our lunch money, even our police academy fees. Isaiah leaned over his brother's shoulder. That's impossible. No, it's not. Solomon scrolled through more records. Every scholarship we got, every transfer request that went through, even our apartment deposits when we moved back to Baltimore, all funded through Vane's Foundation accounts. Evelyn studied Alana's ledger under the light. The pages were yellow and brittle, but the handwriting was clear. Her daughter-in-law had written in careful code, using initials and street addresses instead of real names. Here, Evelyn said, pointing to an entry dated exactly 17 years ago. AC trusted EC with package, location secure, GR approved placement personally. Reverend Hale set down his coffee cup. AC would be Alana Carter. EC is you, Evelyn. But who's GR? The answer hit Isaiah like a punch to the chest. Gideon Rourke. The room went silent except for the hum of the fluorescent bulb. I remember now, Reverend Hale said slowly. Commander Rourke brought you boys to Evelyn himself. Walked right up to her door with your files under his arm. Said he'd personally reviewed dozens of families, but Evelyn was the only one qualified. Solomon's hands stopped typing. He didn't save us from the fire. He used us as bait. Think about it, Isaiah said, pacing between the tables. He puts us with Evelyn because he knows Alana trusted her. Then he watches all three of us in one place. Waits to see if anyone mentions the ledger or asks questions about the warehouse. Evelyn closed the ledger carefully. When nothing happened for years, he got comfortable. Started guiding your careers. Made sure you stayed loyal to him. We were his insurance policy, Solomon said. Two grateful cops who'd never suspect their father figure. Isaiah slammed his fist against the wall. 17 years. He's been playing us for 17 years. Stop that, Evelyn said sharply. You think he created who you are? Isaiah turned to face her. He controlled every major decision in our lives. Did he control how you treated homeless kids on your beat? Did he make you refuse bribes? Did he force you to learn Spanish so you could help immigrant families? That's different. No, it's not. Evelyn stood up, all 5 feet and 2 inches of her radiating fury. That man may have opened doors, but he didn't build your character. I watched you both choose right over easy every single day. That's not manipulation. That's who you are. Solomon stared at the laptop screen. But everything we accomplished, you accomplished it, Reverend Hale said firmly. Rourke gave you opportunities. You turned them into something honorable. Evelyn gathered the ledger pages. He thought he could use my love for you boys against me. Thought I'd stay quiet to protect you. But love doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous. She pulled out her phone. It's time we used his arrogance against him. What are you thinking? Isaiah asked. Vane believes I'm scared. Believes tonight's attack broke my spirit. So I'm going to call his office right now and tell him exactly what he wants to hear. Evelyn dialed the number from Vane's business card. The phone rang twice before a smooth voice answered. Everett Vane speaking. Mr. Vane, this is Evelyn Carter. I think it's time we talked about selling my house. The morning light filtered through the windows of Reverend Hale's church office as Evelyn hung up the phone. Vane's assistant had been sickeningly polite, scheduling a private meeting for 7 o'clock that evening at Romano's, an empty Italian restaurant in the heart of his redevelopment zone. He took the bait, Evelyn announced to the room. Wants to meet tonight. Federal investigator Lena Brooks looked up from her laptop, where she'd been reviewing financial records. At 42, Brooks had spent years building cases against corrupt officials and housing discrimination rings. Her steel-gray pantsuit and no-nonsense expression made it clear she didn't waste time on cases she couldn't win. I need a direct confession linking Vane to the gang attacks, Brooks said. Without his own words admitting conspiracy, this stays a local matter. Solomon spread building blueprints across the table. Romano's has been closed for 6 months. Perfect location for Vane. No witnesses, no security cameras still working. That's why we're creating our own witnesses, Isaiah said, studying photographs of the surrounding buildings. I found an abandoned apartment with clear sight lines to the restaurant's front and back exits. We can position residents as distant observers on 3 different corners. Evelyn pulled out a notebook and began writing. What negotiation points does Vane expect to hear? Desperation, Brooks replied. Fear about your safety. Concern for your sons' careers. He needs to believe last night's attack worked. He'll want the ledger, Solomon added, but he'll also want proof you haven't copied it. Evelyn nodded, memorizing each detail. I'll tell him the gang scared me, that I can't risk Isaiah and Solomon getting hurt because of my stubbornness. I'll bring what looks like the original ledger and promise it's the only copy. Brooks opened a metal briefcase filled with recording equipment. These transmitters are military grade. Audio and video feeds will go directly to my office and 3 backup locations. Solomon held up a manila folder thick with property documents. I'll hide the primary recorder inside the deed transfer papers. Secondary backup goes in your purse. 3rd one clips inside your jacket collar. What about escape routes? Isaiah asked. Evelyn had already studied the restaurant's layout during her morning walk. Back door leads to an alley that connects to 3 different streets. Side window in the kitchen opens onto a loading dock. Main entrance is glass, so anyone inside can see approaching vehicles. Vane's security chief is Malcolm Sutter, Brooks warned. Former military contractor. Treats intimidation like a business transaction. He'll have guards positioned to control every exit. Isaiah traced his finger across the restaurant blueprint. I counted 4 men yesterday when I surveilled the location. 2 outside, 2 inside. Sutter prefers to stay mobile, probably in a vehicle nearby. Reverend Hale cleared his throat. What about Commander Rourke? If he learns about this operation... He won't, Solomon said firmly. Isaiah and I report for desk duty this morning. We'll process paperwork, file reports, act completely normal. During lunch break, we leave separately and use unregistered vehicles. Brooks pulled out 3 sealed evidence envelopes. Before we move forward, I need insurance. If something goes wrong tonight, these ledger copies need to survive. Evelyn had spent the early morning carefully photocopying every page of Alana's evidence. She placed 1 copy in each envelope, sealing them with tape that would show any tampering. Clara Bell gets the first copy, Evelyn decided. She's got the sharpest memory in the neighborhood, and enough grandchildren to keep her safe. I'll take the second, Reverend Hale said. Church records are protected by law. Brooks took the 3rd envelope. This goes directly to FBI headquarters. Even if Rourke tries to seize local evidence, federal copies remain untouchable. Solomon tested the recording equipment 1 final time. The tiny devices transmitted clearly to Brooks's laptop, creating multiple audio and video streams. Everything's working, but remember, we get one chance at this. If Vane suspects we're recording, he won't, Evelyn interrupted, because I'm going to give him exactly what he expects. A frightened old woman who finally learned her place. Brooks closed her briefcase. I'll monitor the live feed from a command vehicle 6 blocks away. The moment Vane confesses to conspiracy, I move in with arrest warrants. Isaiah studied the tactical positions on his map. Trusted residents will be Mrs. Henderson near the bus stop, Tony Martinez outside the corner store, and the Williams family walking their dog. Far enough away to stay safe, close enough to witness everything. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Isaiah and Solomon endured hours of meaningless desk work, filing reports and answering routine calls while their minds raced through every detail of the evening plan. Rourke stopped by their desks twice, asking casual questions about their patrol schedules and making small talk about weekend plans. Everything normal? He asked Solomon during his second visit. Just paperwork, Commander, Solomon replied without looking up, catching up on case files. When lunch break arrived, the brothers left separately. Isaiah walked 3 blocks before entering a parking garage where Brooks had left an unmarked sedan. Solomon took the bus to a different location and picked up a borrowed pickup truck from one of Evelyn's neighbors. By 6:30, everyone was in position. Brooks sat in her command vehicle, monitoring 3 separate video feeds. Isaiah crouched in the abandoned apartment, watching through binoculars as Sutter's men took their posts around Romano's. The resident witnesses spread across the neighborhood, pretending to wait for buses, walk dogs, and chat with neighbors. As the sun began setting over West Baltimore, Evelyn walked slowly toward the dark restaurant. She carried a worn leather purse and a manila folder containing what appeared to be Alana's original ledger. Her steps were measured and careful, playing the role of a defeated woman who had finally accepted the inevitable. Malcolm Sutter emerged from a black SUV as she approached Romano's front door. He was exactly what Brooks had described. Cold eyes, efficient movements, the bearing of a man who viewed violence as just another tool. "Mrs. Carter," Sutter said, his voice flat and professional. "Mr. Vane is waiting inside." Evelyn nodded without speaking. She followed Sutter through the restaurant's front entrance, stepping into the dim interior where Everett Vane sat alone at a corner table. The moment she crossed the threshold, she heard the metallic click of Sutter locking the door behind her. Inside Romano's abandoned restaurant, Everett Vane sat with his hands folded on the scarred wooden table. The overhead lights had been disconnected years ago, leaving only the pale glow from streetlights filtering through dusty windows. Empty chairs stood stacked against the walls like silent witnesses. "Mrs. Carter," Vane said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of practiced sympathy. "Please sit down. We need to discuss your future." Evelyn remained standing near the entrance, clutching her worn leather purse. Malcolm Sutter positioned himself beside the front door, while 2 additional guards flanked the kitchen entrance. Their presence filled the small space with barely contained menace. "I brought what you wanted," Evelyn said quietly, pulling the manila folder from her purse. Alana's ledger, every page she wrote before the fire. Vane's eyes locked onto the folder with undisguised hunger. "Excellent. And I've brought something for you as well." He slid a thick envelope across the table. $200,000. Cash. More than enough to purchase a comfortable home anywhere in Baltimore. "What about my neighbors?" Evelyn asked. "The families who've lived here for decades?" "They'll receive fair compensation," Vane replied smoothly. "Everyone benefits when communities embrace progress." Evelyn opened the folder and spread several photocopied pages across the table. Alana documented everything: dates, times, money transfers between your shell companies and gang leaders. She knew you were paying the Foundry Wolves to terrorize black homeowners. Vane's polished expression never wavered. "Mrs. Carter, I think you're confused. My company focuses exclusively on legitimate redevelopment." "Stop lying." Evelyn's voice cut through the restaurant like a blade. You hired criminals to burn out families. You destroyed businesses, threatened children, turned decent neighborhoods into war zones, all so you could steal property for pennies on the dollar. The restaurant fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic outside. Sutter's hand moved slightly toward his jacket, but Vane raised one finger, signaling patience. You want the truth? Vane's mask of compassion finally slipped. Fine. Yes, I hired the Foundry Wolves. Yes, they cleared properties using whatever methods proved necessary. These people were obstacles to progress, Mrs. Carter. Parasites clinging to worthless buildings in a dying neighborhood. Worthless? Evelyn stepped closer to the table. You mean the contaminated industrial site? The one where your company dumped toxic waste for decades? Vane's eyes flashed with genuine surprise. How did you— Alana discovered everything, Evelyn continued relentlessly. The illegal dumping, the buried chemicals, the cancer clusters among children who played in contaminated soil. You needed this entire corridor cleared before environmental inspectors could examine the site. That woman was a meddling fool, Vane snarled, all pretense of civility abandoned. Just like her sons, just like you. But Commander Rourke has protected this operation for 17 years, and he'll keep protecting it for 17 more. Evelyn placed both hands on the table and leaned forward. Rourke killed Alana Carter. Then he manipulated her children, guided their careers, watched them every single day to make sure they never learned the truth. Of course he did, Vane laughed bitterly. Rourke understands that progress requires sacrifice. A few black families displaced, a few inconvenient witnesses silenced, small prices for transforming this wasteland into something valuable. Sutter checked his watch. Mr. Vane, we should finalize this. Vane slid a contract across the table. Sign the deed transfer, Mrs. Carter. Take the money. Walk away alive. Evelyn stared at the document for several long seconds, then she tore it in half. Go to hell. Sutter moved instantly, grabbing Evelyn's arm and twisting it behind her back. She cried out as pain shot through her shoulder, but before he could drag her toward the exit, the kitchen door exploded inward. Isaiah Carter charged through the doorway like a force of nature. His injured shoulder screamed with every movement, but he powered through the pain, driving his good arm into the first guard's solar plexus. The man doubled over, gasping for breath, as Isaiah spun toward the second attacker. The guard swung a metal chair toward Isaiah's head. Isaiah ducked, feeling the wind from the weapon's passage, then grabbed the man's wrist and used his momentum to slam him face first into the restaurant's brick wall. Blood splattered across faded wallpaper as the guard collapsed unconscious. Simultaneously, Solomon emerged from the basement stairwell behind Sutter. The security chief heard footsteps and released Evelyn, spinning with practiced efficiency to face this new threat. His hand went inside his jacket, reaching for a concealed weapon, but Solomon was already moving. Solomon tackled Sutter around the waist, driving both men backward into an overturned table. Wooden legs splintered under their combined weight as they crashed to the floor. Sutter brought his knee up toward Solomon's ribs, but Solomon twisted aside and hammered his fist into Sutter's jaw. Sutter grabbed Solomon's shirt and hurled him sideways through a glass partition separating the dining area from what had once been a hostess station. Glass exploded in all directions as Solomon hit the floor hard, blood streaming from cuts on his face and hands. But he kept moving. Solomon rolled to his feet as Sutter advanced, drawing a black pistol from his shoulder holster. Solomon dove forward, tackling Sutter's legs just as the weapon cleared leather. They hit the floor again, grappling desperately for control of the gun. Isaiah finished disarming the second guard and turned toward Vane, who was scrambling toward the back exit. Before he could pursue, the restaurant's front door burst open, and Lena Brooks stormed inside with 4 federal agents, weapons drawn. FBI, nobody move. The agents spread throughout the restaurant, securing weapons and placing zip-tie restraints on the defeated guards. Brooks approached Vane, who stood frozen beside an overturned chair with his hands raised. "Everett Vane, you're under arrest for conspiracy, civil rights violations, and racketeering," Brooks announced as she applied handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." For one shining moment, victory seemed complete. The recording devices had captured everything. Vane's confession was documented. The conspiracy was exposed. Evelyn stood surrounded by the two young men she had raised, both bleeding but alive, both having risked everything to protect her. Then heavy footsteps echoed from the front entrance. Commander Gideon Rourke strode into Romano's with 6 uniformed officers at his back. His weathered face showed no surprise at the scene before him: overturned furniture, broken glass, federal agents restraining prisoners. If anything, he looked satisfied. "Agent Brooks," Rourke said calmly, "I'm afraid there's been a serious misunderstanding." Brooks turned toward him, still holding Vane's arm. "Commander, we have multiple confessions on record. You have illegally obtained evidence from an unauthorized operation," Rourke interrupted, producing an official document. "This is a federal warrant seizing all materials connected to this investigation. Your suspects are now in Baltimore police custody." "Sir, that's not how—" "Officers Carter and Carter," Rourke continued, ignoring Brooks entirely. "You are both suspended pending investigation of assault charges, destruction of property, and conducting illegal surveillance operations." Isaiah stepped forward, his face dark with rage. "Commander, that man just confessed to hiring gang members." "That man is the victim of an elaborate entrapment scheme," Rourke replied smoothly. "Mr. Vane came here tonight in good faith to negotiate a legitimate property purchase. Instead, he was attacked by suspended police officers acting without authorization." The federal agents looked to Brooks for guidance, but she was staring at Rourke's warrant with growing horror. The document bore authentic federal seals and judge signatures. Somehow, Rourke had anticipated their entire operation. As Brooks reluctantly released Vane, Baltimore police officers began collecting the recording equipment. The manila folder containing Alana's ledger disappeared into an evidence bag. Even the broken furniture would be catalogued and removed. "Mrs. Carter," Rourke said, his voice gentle and paternal, "you've had a difficult evening. My officers will escort you home safely." Before anyone could protest, 3 uniformed officers surrounded Evelyn. They weren't rough, but their intent was unmistakable. She looked desperately toward Isaiah and Solomon, but both brothers were being handcuffed by other officers. "Where are you taking her?" Solomon demanded, as the restraints clicked around his wrists. "Home," Rourke replied, after a brief stop at the station for her statement. As the officers guided Evelyn toward a police transport van parked outside, Solomon caught a glimpse of the vehicle's identification number. His police training kicked in automatically, memorizing the digits even as shock and rage clouded his thinking. The van doors closed with a hollow metallic thud. Through the narrow window, Evelyn watched her sons being loaded into separate patrol cars, their faces twisted with helpless fury. Solomon turned toward the transport dispatcher, who had arrived with Rourke's convoy. "I need to verify the transport order," he called out, his voice carrying the authority of his police training despite the handcuffs. The dispatcher checked his clipboard and frowned. "I don't have any authorized transport orders tonight." The realization hit Solomon like a physical blow. There was no official record, no proper documentation, no legitimate reason for Evelyn to be in that van. As the transport vehicle disappeared into Baltimore's maze of dark streets, Solomon understood with terrible clarity that Commander Gideon Rourke had just abducted the woman who saved their lives. The police transport van lurched through another sharp turn, its tires scraping against concrete barriers as Rourke's driver navigated the narrow industrial streets. Inside the windowless rear compartment, Evelyn pressed her back against the cold metal wall and counted every movement. Left turn, straight for 30 seconds. Right turn, down a steep incline. She had ridden these routes for 23 years as a transit supervisor. Even blindfolded, she could map Baltimore's forgotten corners by the rhythm of wheels over broken asphalt, the echo of walls closing in, the distant rumble of freight trains crossing overhead bridges. They were heading toward the old transit depot, the place where everything began 17 years ago. 3 blocks behind, Isaiah gripped the steering wheel of Solomon's unmarked patrol car while his brother tracked the faint signal from the concealed GPS device. Solomon had hidden the tiny tracker inside the property folder that morning, knowing Evelyn might need protection if their plan went wrong. He hadn't imagined it would save her from their own commanding officer. "Signal's getting stronger," Solomon said, watching the blinking dot move across his phone screen. "They're definitely heading toward the depot district." Isaiah's jaw tightened as he recognized the route. The same streets their mother had walked before she died. The same warehouses that had burned while 2 homeless children watched from behind a chain-link fence. "Why there?" Isaiah asked. "What's Rourke planning?" "Nothing good," Solomon replied, checking his service weapon. "But we're not letting him finish it." The transport van finally stopped beside a rusted steel building marked with faded Baltimore Transit Authority logos. Evelyn heard the driver's door slam, then heavy footsteps approaching the rear doors. When they opened, Commander Gideon Rourke stood silhouetted against the orange glow of distant streetlights. His uniform was perfectly pressed. His silver hair caught the light like a halo. He looked exactly like the decorated hero who had comforted 2 frightened children 17 years earlier. "Mrs. Carter," he said gently, extending his hand, "please step out." Evelyn remained seated. "Where are we?" "Somewhere we can talk privately." Rourke's voice carried the same paternal warmth that had once made Isaiah and Solomon trust him completely. "About your late daughter-in-law's research." "Alana wasn't my daughter-in-law," Evelyn said carefully. "She was their mother." "Of course." Rourke smiled, but the expression never reached his eyes. A brilliant woman. Too brilliant for her own good. He gestured toward the abandoned depot entrance, where 2 Foundry Wolves gang members waited in the shadows. Both men carried assault rifles and wore the distinctive wolf head tattoos that marked them as Brock Maddox's inner circle. Evelyn climbed down from the van slowly, her arthritis protesting the awkward movement. Rourke didn't offer assistance. Instead, he produced a key and unlocked her restraints with practiced efficiency. "Thank you," she said, rubbing her wrists where the metal had chafed. "Don't thank me yet," Rourke replied. "We still have business to discuss." He led her through the depot's main entrance into a cavernous space filled with rusted bus lifts, broken concrete, and pools of stagnant water. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows between massive support pillars. The air smelled of motor oil, decay, and something else. The lingering scent of smoke from a fire that had burned 17 years earlier. Rourke stopped beside a section of scorched flooring where the warehouse had once stood. Blackened steel beams twisted upward like the ribs of some ancient beast. "Do you know what happened here?" he asked. Evelyn studied the burn patterns, the blast marks, the careful arrangement of debris. "Someone set a fire to hide evidence. Someone set a fire to protect good people from a dangerous woman," Rourke corrected. "Alana Carter was gathering information that could have destroyed careers, families, entire lives. She didn't understand the bigger picture." "The bigger picture being your partnership with Everett Vane?" Rourke's smile widened. "Much bigger than that, Mrs. Carter. Vane pays well, but he's just one client. The Foundry Wolves have protected important interests in this city for over 2 decades. We've prevented riots, eliminated troublemakers, kept dangerous neighborhoods from spreading into valuable areas. You've terrorized families. We've maintained order." Rourke's voice hardened. Until your precious Alana started asking questions she shouldn't ask, recording conversations she shouldn't record, building cases that would have sent good police officers to prison. He gestured toward the burned section of flooring. So I gave the order. 1 warehouse fire, 1 troublesome woman eliminated, problem solved. Except for her children. Ah, yes, Isaiah and Solomon. Rourke's expression softened with genuine affection. Beautiful boys, so young, so frightened when I carried them from the flames. Everyone called me a hero for saving them. Evelyn felt ice forming in her chest. You didn't save them. I created them, Rourke said proudly. 2 homeless children become respected police officers under my guidance. Their academy training, their first assignments, their career advancement, all carefully managed. I even arranged their transfer back to Baltimore when this situation with you required personal attention. They don't know. They will soon. Rourke reached into his jacket and produced Alana's cassette recorder, the same device Evelyn had hidden in her basement. Unless you give me the original ledger, all copies, all notes, everything Alana left behind. And if I refuse, then tomorrow morning, Isaiah and Solomon Carter will be arrested for your murder. Evidence will show they killed you during a domestic dispute over drug money found in your community kitchen. Tragic story. 2 decorated officers destroy their lives defending a woman who was secretly running a criminal operation. Evelyn stared at the blackened concrete where Alana Carter had died, where 2 children had lost their mother, where 17 years of lies and manipulation had begun. The ledger's been copied, she said quietly. Rourke's face went rigid. What? Multiple copies, distributed to people you'll never find. Your confession tonight was recorded. Federal agents have the evidence. You're lying. Test me. Rage twisted Rourke's features into something ugly and primitive. He grabbed the radio from his belt and keyed the microphone with violent force. Maddox, bring every man you have to the depot, now. Copy that, Commander. How many we talking about? All of them, Rourke snarled, his composure finally cracking. Burn this place down if you have to. Leave nothing standing. What Rourke didn't notice was the small silver wristwatch on Evelyn's left arm, a seemingly innocent timepiece that Reverend Hale had given her that morning. Its tiny, built-in transmitter was broadcasting every word to a receiver hidden beneath the pulpit of his neighborhood church, where trusted community members were recording everything on multiple devices. The trap Evelyn had set was much larger than anyone realized. Reverend Thomas Hale was kneeling beside his church altar when the emergency signal broke through the static. Evelyn's voice came in fragments. Depot, 17 years. Rourke ordered the fire, before the transmission cut to silence. His hands shook as he rewound the recording device hidden beneath the pulpit. The quality was poor, filled with interference, but every word was audible. Rourke's confession, his threats against Isaiah and Solomon, the location where he was holding Evelyn. Hale grabbed his phone and began making calls. Isaiah answered on the first ring. Reverend, what? Get to the church, now. Bring Solomon. Hale's voice carried the authority of 40 years in ministry. She's in trouble. 20 minutes later, the church basement was packed with people Evelyn had fed, sheltered, and protected over the years. Clara Bell sat in the front row, her grandson sleeping against her shoulder. Lena Brooks stood beside a folding table covered with federal communication equipment. Isaiah and Solomon flanked the audio system, their faces grim as they listened to the broken transmission for the 3rd time. She's alive, Solomon said when the recording ended. But not for long. Brooks activated her encrypted radio. This is Agent Brooks requesting immediate federal backup at the Baltimore Transit Depot on Russell Street. We have an active kidnapping involving corrupt police officers and confirmed civil rights violations. The response crackled through static. Agent Brooks, Baltimore PD reports no emergency at that location. Local units are requesting you stand down pending verification. Baltimore PD is compromised. Brooks shot back. I need direct federal intervention. Negative. Local jurisdiction takes priority. Federal backup is unavailable until morning. Isaiah slammed his fist against the wall. They're blocking us. Rourke controls dispatch, Solomon realized. He's redirecting every unit that could help. Brooks tried 3 more federal channels. Each request was delayed, questioned, or transferred to supervisors who didn't answer. The system that was supposed to protect Evelyn was being used to trap her. Then we go alone, Isaiah said. Clara Bell stood up carefully, settling her grandson in the chair. You're not going alone. She opened her purse and produced a folded sheet of paper. Transit maps from when Evelyn worked maintenance. She made me copies years ago. Solomon spread the map across the table. Yellow highlighter marked old drainage tunnels, maintenance passages, and service roads that most city workers had forgotten. Evelyn had annotated everything: water depth, structural damage, electrical hazards. There, Solomon pointed to a tunnel entrance 3 blocks from the depot. Maintenance access connects to the main building through the old inspection bay. Isaiah studied the route. How do we split this? You draw them away, Solomon said without hesitation. Take the patrol car, make noise, get their attention. I'll use my bike to reach the tunnel entrance while they're chasing you. What about backup? Brooks checked her equipment one final time. I'll coordinate federal units from here and preserve the transmission as evidence. When this is over, we need proof of everything Rourke said. Reverend Hale disappeared into his office and returned with a canvas bag. Inside were spare body camera batteries, basic medical supplies, and 2 sets of tactical gloves. Emergency kit, he explained. Been preparing for something like this since the attack started. Isaiah clipped fresh batteries into his body camera while Solomon did the same. Both brothers checked their service weapons, radios, and protective equipment with mechanical precision. Non-lethal if possible, Isaiah reminded his brother. Agreed. But if they threaten Evelyn, we do whatever it takes. 3 miles away, inside the abandoned depot, Evelyn was studying the control panel mounted near the main entrance. Decades of maintenance experience let her identify the power switches, emergency systems, and mechanical controls that could be used to her advantage. When Rourke turned away to coordinate with Maddox over the radio, she deliberately dropped her blue cotton scarf beside a service door marked Inspection Bay Access, a trail for Solomon to follow. Maddox's voice crackled through Rourke's radio. Commander, we've got movement at that church where the old woman feeds people. 2 patrol units just left heading different directions. Follow them, Rourke ordered. Don't let either one reach this location. Back at the church, Isaiah was already pulling away from the curb when Solomon's motorcycle roared to life behind him. Through the basement windows, residents could see gang vehicles emerging from side streets and alleys where they'd been waiting. The chase began before the rescue plan was fully in place. Isaiah accelerated toward the industrial district, his patrol car's headlights cutting through the darkness. In his mirrors, he counted 2 black SUVs closing the distance. Their drivers were skilled, aggressive, and determined to stop him before he could reach Evelyn. Solomon took a different route, weaving through narrow residential streets on his police motorcycle. The tunnel entrance was still 8 blocks away when he spotted headlights following him. Maddox's men had divided their forces to pursue both brothers. Inside the depot, Evelyn heard the distant sound of engines approaching. Multiple vehicles, moving fast. The final confrontation was about to begin. The pursuit tore through the warehouse district like a predator hunt. Isaiah's patrol car screamed between loading docks and abandoned buildings, while 2 black SUVs closed behind him. The depot was 6 blocks away. He had to draw them in without getting killed first. The nearest SUV rammed his bumper hard. Isaiah's car lurched forward, rear window exploding in a shower of glass. Fragments cut his neck as he fought to maintain control. "Come on," he muttered, checking Evelyn's route map spread across his passenger seat. The bus washing lane was marked with her careful handwriting. Steel barrier descends automatically when maintenance switch is activated. The second SUV pulled alongside him, its passenger window rolling down. Isaiah saw the muzzle of an assault rifle emerging and yanked his wheel hard right. Bullets shattered his driver's window as his car bounced across a loading yard between concrete pillars. The SUVs followed, their drivers skilled enough to match his evasive maneuvers. Maddox's voice crackled over their radio. "Box him in! Don't let him reach that depot." Isaiah spotted the narrow entrance to the bus washing lane ahead, barely wide enough for one vehicle. Perfect. He accelerated toward it, while the SUVs converged from both sides, trying to ram him into the concrete walls. At the last second, Isaiah hit his brakes and dove beneath the steel cleaning barrier just as it began descending. The mechanism had been triggered by pressure sensors built into the lane entrance. The first SUV, moving too fast to stop, struck the barrier at full speed. Metal shrieked against metal as the vehicle's roof crumpled and its front end accordioned against the concrete. The second SUV swerved to avoid the wreckage but lost control on the wet pavement. It flipped sideways, rolled twice, and slammed into a stack of old tires that absorbed most of the impact. Both vehicles were disabled, their occupants stunned but alive. Isaiah abandoned his damaged patrol car and continued on foot, following the maintenance route toward the depot's rear entrance. 3 miles away, Solomon reached the drainage tunnel that Clara Bell's map had marked as Maintenance Access, Water Level Variable. The concrete opening was partially hidden beneath overgrown weeds and rusted warning signs. He could hear water moving in the darkness below. Solomon dropped through the entrance and landed in ankle-deep water that was colder than expected. The tunnel stretched ahead for 50 yards before connecting to the depot's foundation. Emergency lighting strips, installed decades ago for transit workers, cast weak yellow light along the concrete walls. He was halfway through when Malcolm Sutter stepped out of an alcove ahead of him. "Far enough, officer." Sutter held a pistol, while 2 guards flanked him in the narrow space. "Mr. Vane said you might try something clever." The tunnel walls worked against Solomon now. He couldn't move sideways to avoid their weapons. But the same walls that trapped him also prevented the 3 men from spreading out effectively. One guard rushed forward with a knife. Solomon caught his wrist, twisted hard, and drove him into the concrete wall. The blade sliced across Solomon's ribs as they struggled, but Solomon managed to disarm him and drive his elbow into the man's throat. The second guard tried to get behind Solomon but couldn't maneuver in the confined space. Solomon grabbed him by the jacket and used his own momentum to slam him face first into the tunnel wall. The man dropped unconscious into the rushing water. Sutter fired twice. The bullets ricocheted off concrete as Solomon dove forward, tackling him around the waist. They fought in the shallow water, trading brutal punches until Solomon managed to pin Sutter's gun hand and deliver a knockout blow to his jaw. Solomon climbed through the maintenance hatch into the depot's basement level, blood seeping through his shirt from the knife wound. Emergency stairs led up to the main floor where machinery hummed in the darkness. Through the steel grating above, he could see the inspection platform where Evelyn was tied to a support beam. Commander Rourke stood behind her, pressing his service pistol against her back. Maddox paced nearby, directing his remaining men through radio communication. "The brothers are here," Maddox announced loudly. "Kill them both the moment you see them." The depot plunged into complete darkness when Evelyn's freed hand found the emergency control switch. Alarms shrieked through the cavernous space as steel service doors began descending from the ceiling, their motors grinding like mechanical thunder. The massive barriers divided the maintenance bay into isolated sections, separating gang members from each other and cutting off their planned escape routes. "What the hell?" Maddox's voice cut off as sparks flew from damaged electrical panels. Isaiah rolled behind an old city bus as gunfire erupted around him. 3 gang members moved between the vehicles, their flashlight beams sweeping frantically through the darkness. One man swung a heavy chain that whistled through the air, its links striking metal with bone-rattling force. The chain caught Isaiah across the shoulder, sending fire down his arm. He felt something pop, his shoulder dislocating from the impact. Gritting his teeth, he grabbed the chain on its next swing and yanked hard, pulling the attacker off balance. They crashed together between 2 buses, fighting for control of the weapon. Another gang member lunged from behind with a knife. Isaiah twisted away, but the blade carved across his ribs, opening a gash that immediately soaked his shirt with blood. He drove his good elbow into the man's face, hearing cartilage crunch, then swept his legs and sent him sprawling onto the concrete floor. The third attacker tried to circle around, but Isaiah herded both men toward the automated bus washing station. When they rushed him together, he dove aside and slammed his palm against the activation button. High-pressure jets erupted from multiple nozzles, while steel brushes descended from overhead tracks. The 2 gang members were caught in the washing cycle, pounded by water pressure and trapped by the rotating brushes inside the steel cage. Their screams mixed with the mechanical noise as Isaiah stumbled away, his dislocated shoulder screaming with every movement. On the inspection platform above, Solomon had reached the metal stairs leading to Evelyn. Maddox met him halfway up, swinging a crowbar that barely missed Solomon's head. The impact against the railing sent vibrations through the entire structure. "You should have stayed gone," Maddox snarled, bringing the crowbar down again. Solomon caught it with both hands, and they wrestled for control on the narrow stairs. The railing groaned under their combined weight. One section gave way completely, leaving a 15-foot drop to the concrete below. Solomon nearly fell through the gap before grabbing Maddox's jacket and pulling them both back onto the stairs. Evelyn worked frantically at the control panel, her other hand still bound, but fingers reaching the hydraulic switches. Lift platforms began rising and descending throughout the depot, their massive arms disrupting the gang's formation and blocking their lines of fire. Emergency lights flickered on and off, creating a strobe effect that made targeting impossible. Maddox drove his knee into Solomon's stomach, doubling him over, then grabbed him by the throat. "This is for my boys you killed." But Evelyn had found the maintenance cage controls. The heavy steel framework descended around the platform like a massive trap. Maddox looked up just as the bars locked into place, imprisoning him inside the inspection area. "You crazy old—" His words were cut off as Solomon delivered a brutal uppercut through the cage bars, dropping Maddox to the platform floor. Below, Commander Rourke emerged from the shadows beside the burned remains of the original warehouse. His service weapon was drawn, pointed directly at Isaiah, who was struggling to reset his dislocated shoulder against a concrete pillar. 17 years, Rourke said, his voice echoing in the vast space. 17 years I've been watching you boys, making sure you never remembered what really happened that night. Isaiah's shoulder snapped back into place with a sickening pop. The pain nearly dropped him to his knees. You killed our mother. Alana was going to destroy everything I'd built. The partnerships, the arrangements, the understanding we had with people like Maddox's predecessors. She couldn't leave well enough alone. Rourke stepped closer, keeping his weapon trained on Isaiah's chest. I made her disappear, and then I made sure you boys would never cause the same problems. You controlled our entire lives. I guided your careers, made sure you became useful instead of dangerous. Everything you are, everything you've accomplished, that's because I allowed it. Rourke's smile was cold in the emergency lighting. Even brought you back to Baltimore when I needed to handle this Evelyn situation. She was getting too close to Alana's evidence. Isaiah could see Solomon moving carefully along the upper platform, but Rourke's position gave him clear sight lines in all directions. I planted those drugs in her kitchen myself, Rourke continued. Turned her into a criminal so nobody would believe anything she said. Would have worked perfectly if you boys hadn't gotten sentimental. You destroyed innocent families. I protected the system that keeps this city functioning. Sometimes that requires difficult choices. Rourke raised his weapon. Like this one. The shot never came. Solomon launched himself from the platform above, crashing into Rourke and sending them both rolling across the concrete floor. Isaiah joined the fight despite his injured shoulder, and together the brothers disarmed the commander. Rourke laughed as they pinned him against the warehouse ruins. You think this matters? Think anyone will believe you? Every piece of evidence, every recording, every witness, I control all of it. This confession disappears the moment I make a phone call. That's when Evelyn called down from the platform. No phone calls necessary, Commander. She held up a small device, the remote control for their body cameras, which had been recording throughout the entire confrontation. Your confession just went live to Agent Brooks, 3 television stations, and every resident gathered at my community kitchen, Evelyn announced, as dawn light began filtering through the depot's broken windows. The whole city heard what you really are. Flashing lights appeared outside as federal vehicles surrounded the building. Agent Brooks's voice echoed through a megaphone. This is the FBI. The building is surrounded. Come out with your hands visible. Rourke's face went white as the sound of boots filled the depot entrance. The sunrise painted the Baltimore skyline in shades of gold and orange as Evelyn Carter walked out of the abandoned transit depot between Isaiah and Solomon. Her hands were finally unbound, her dignity restored, and her head held high despite the bruises marking her face. Behind them, federal agents secured the building where 17 years of corruption had finally been exposed. Agent Brooks met them at the entrance, her expression grim but satisfied. We have Rourke, Vane, Maddox, and 6 other gang members in custody. The financial records you helped us recover show payments going back to the original warehouse fire. What about the other officers? Solomon asked, his arm still supporting Evelyn's weight. 12 arrests so far, including 3 sergeants and a lieutenant. More coming once we finish analyzing the communications data. Brooks looked directly at Evelyn. Your body camera footage is already being broadcast across the city. Every news station has Rourke's confession. Isaiah flexed his injured shoulder carefully. And the planted evidence? Cleared. All charges against Mrs. Carter are being dropped. The drugs found in her kitchen had Rourke's fingerprints on the packaging. Brooks handed Evelyn a business card. Federal prosecutors want to meet with you tomorrow, but tonight you should rest. The following days brought a flood of vindication. Television reporters gathered outside Evelyn's house as Agent Brooks held press conferences, releasing the complete body camera recordings and announcing the arrest of 15 corrupt officers connected to Rourke's network. The footage of Rourke's confession played continuously, his cold admission of murder and decades of conspiracy shocking viewers across Maryland. Commander Gideon Rourke betrayed his oath, his department, and the families he was sworn to protect, Brooks told reporters. Mrs. Evelyn Carter and officers Isaiah and Solomon Carter are heroes who exposed a criminal conspiracy that terrorized innocent homeowners for nearly 2 decades. The hearings began within weeks. In packed courtrooms, prosecutors presented evidence of the systematic intimidation campaign that had targeted black homeowners across West Baltimore. Rourke sat stone-faced as witness after witness described the Foundry Wolves' attacks, the planted evidence, and the police protection that had allowed the violence to continue. Everett Vane took the stand in his own defense, attempting to blame everything on Rourke's manipulation. I thought I was working with legitimate law enforcement, he testified, his expensive suit unable to hide his desperation. Commander Rourke assured me the property acquisitions were legal. The jury didn't believe him. Financial records showed Vane had personally authorized payments to gang members and had profited from every forced sale. His testimony only strengthened the conspiracy charges. 3 months later, Rourke received life in prison for murder, conspiracy, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. Vane lost his company, his fortune, and received 25 years for his role in the scheme. Federal judges ordered all seized assets liquidated to compensate the families who had been threatened, attacked, or forced from their homes. The redevelopment properties were transferred into a protected community land trust, ensuring that residents could never again be displaced by intimidation or illegal schemes. The toxic waste site was properly remediated using funds from Vane's confiscated accounts. Isaiah and Solomon were reinstated with full honors and departmental commendations, but both chose assignments serving their home neighborhood rather than seeking promotions downtown. Evelyn's damaged row house underwent complete reconstruction, expanding into the neighboring properties to create the Evelyn Carter Home for displaced youth. The settlement provided permanent funding for 24 beds, educational programs, and job training for teenagers who had nowhere else to go. On opening day, news crews filmed the ribbon-cutting ceremony as dozens of community members gathered to celebrate. The mayor praised Evelyn's courage. Federal officials described the case as a model for fighting organized corruption, and local residents shared stories of how her community kitchen had sustained them during the most dangerous months. When the speeches ended, Solomon stepped to the microphone. "Everyone keeps saying Isaiah and I saved our mother from the gang," he said, looking directly at Evelyn. "That's not accurate. We saved her for one night. She saved us for the rest of our lives." The crowd applauded as the doors opened and the first group of homeless children walked hesitantly toward the entrance. Evelyn watched them with the same careful attention she had given two frightened boys 17 years earlier. "Then we keep saving one another," she said, extending her hand to welcome them home. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.